MTN News, this is Montana This Morning.
The first case of avian flu in a domestic flock in Gallatin County. Hear from our state vet and a local hobby farmer coming up.
I'm Casey Conlon. A Luther couple chose this birthing suite to have their daughter, but she had other ideas. The amazing story of where Kinsley Powers was born, coming up.
That is really
I
amazing
saw
story
that
too. It's
story,
so good,
yeah.
Happy birthday to her a couple of days late.
Yep.
Meantime, it is 6:30. Chet Lehman, Matt Elwell with you here. Oh man, I'm looking out the window now and I can just see the sun kissing the bottom of some of the boughs on that pine tree out on your patio. Beautiful.
It is going to be a very nice day. I think our drawback is going to be the wind. Southwest Montana, it warms up, gets windy, gets cold, gets windy. Well, this time we're talking a warmer wind. Daytime highs will build very quickly from the 30s and 40s that we're seeing now. In fact, I expect daytime highs to be into the low 70s. We talked about this earlier. Last time we saw 70s, the end of March for the area. It's going to be a nice afternoon. It'll just be more cloudy, a little windy. We're going to break down your weekend forecast. It's going to be a wet one with some snow involved before it's all said and done. It's coming up in just a few minutes.
All right, thank you, Matt. 6:31, our top story this half hour. There is a confirmed case of avian flu in a domestic flock of birds in the Manhattan-Belgrade area. Dan's Jane McDonald spoke with some experts and a local Bozeman hobby farmer to see the ripple effect and what you should be aware of.
Today we have our first case of the avian flu here in the Gallatin County in a domestic flock.
It started a couple years ago. My husband wanted to have chickens for the eggs, and so he kind of surprised us one day and showed up with a dozen chicks from Murdoch's.
And now their hobby farm extends to ducks and goats, but being near a creek has brought concern of avian flu for their feathered friends.
We were a little concerned that maybe some of the waterfowl might come into the yard.
This flu is being transmitted from migratory waterfowl and wild birds.
It's not a public health issue. It is not a food safety issue. Although I would say that in 2015, when we had a similar outbreak, there was a pretty significant increase in the cost of poultry products.
But the big concern really is it can severely disrupt supply chain.
The mortality rate from this avian influenza strain is over 90% for chickens.
It's potentially a pretty serious scenario. The biggest thing is it is highly pathogenic, that H5N1.
So how long can we expect this flu to last?
Well, that's a great question. So that is one of the reasons why our response is so aggressive and robust. It might be useful, again, to look back on what happened in 2015, and I believe the last detection of high-path AI in 2015 happened during the first week of June.
You know, it's tough with something like this. I know the avian flu has come and gone a couple times, so we'll just have to keep an eye on it and make sure that, we don't have any, surge in cases. And unfortunately, if, one of our flock gets it, it's probably going to be detrimental to the rest of the flock.
One of the best ways to keep a flock protected is to keep them inside to avoid contact with wild birds or waterfowl. In Bozeman, Jane McDonald, MTN News.
Now, according to the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Gallatin County, the 8th county in Montana to detect avian flu in domestic poultry, infecting more than 78,000 birds across the state. USDA reported the state's first case early last month in Cascade and Juneau Basin County. More cases of avian influenza have since followed in Toole, Glacier, Missoula, Ponderay, Fergus, and now, of course, Gallatin. It's an outbreak that's been sweeping the nation, with 32 states detecting bird flu, affecting nearly 37 million birds. It's now the worst U.S. outbreak of avian flu since 2015, when more than 50 million birds died. 6:34. If you are a homeowner, there's a good chance you have looked recently at how much your home is worth. The housing boom continues to see real estate prices set records in many parts of the country. While high prices are difficult for people looking to buy, for homeowners themselves, high values can sometimes provide financial perks. But what happens when your home is undervalued? Our Joe St. George looks at an issue facing some homeowners and the plan in Washington to fix it.
What type of neighborhood is this?
Oh my God, this is a family. This is a community.
I want you to meet Carlette Duffy, who absolutely loves where she lives in Indianapolis. She bought this house for a bargain from a friend in 2017 after it sat empty for years.
There was a fire, a major fire, and so I purchased it for $100,000.
Recently, she was curious how much her beloved property is now worth. She wanted to take out some equity. A nearby neighbor recently got a similar house appraised for close to $200,000, and that is where this story really begins.
I decided to refinance.
Refinancing often requires appraisals, and when her first one came back, her home was listed at $125,000.
I thought that one was low.
So Carlette went to another company who valued it at $110,000.
I'm floored.
Before giving up, Carlette decided to conduct an experiment.
I decided to take this one down.
She removed all the African art as well as family photos, books, even hair products from her home. She got her friend Hank to show the house to the appraiser.
Anything that to me said a black person lives here, I took it out.
When that appraisal came back, the value was listed at $259,000.
This is proof. It was me. It is so painful and so hurtful to be treated like this.
Carlette's story is consistent with data from Freddie Mac. A recent report found 12.5% of homes appraised in black communities nationwide were valued at less than the original cost of constructing the home. Only 7.5% of white communities experienced that. The issue attracting the attention of the White House, with a task force recently announcing efforts to hold appraisers more accountable, as well as better educate homeowners on options when an appraisal comes in low.
The appraisal industry is one of the least diverse industries in the country. In fact, it's over 90% white, 70% male.
Amy Nelson, who represents Carlette at the Housing Center of Central Indiana, says all of this is a good first step, with the appraiser industry recently committing to work to improve their diversity as well.
We all have to work together.
Carlette just hopes her now viral story produces even more change.
This happens every single day.
In Indianapolis, I'm Joe St. George.
All right, back here at home, we have an update to a story we reported on about 2 weeks ago. Spirit has been returned to Montana State. Bobcat statue went missing from Strand Union building in early April. Police received word just before 8 yesterday morning. The statue was found. Guess where? 50-yard line of Bobcat Stadium. Thankfully, Spirit appears to be undamaged. Police do not know who returned the statue inside Bobcat Stadium at this time. They're still welcoming tips if anyone has information about the case. University says it's grateful for Spirit's return. 50-yard line. 6:37 now to a truly special delivery, as a newborn from Luther, Montana will have quite the story to tell someday. Her parents delivered her in the family's vehicle on the way to the hospital. MTN's Casey Conlon has her amazing story.
Jamie and Joe Powers wanted a different birthing experience for their soon-to-be daughter Kinsley, so they chose this birthing suite at the Willow and Sage Midwifery here in Billings. It no doubt would have been a beautiful and calming place to welcome Kinsley into the world, but she had a different idea.
She asked if we thought we were going to make it, and that, right then I said, no, we need to turn around.
Let's set the scene. It's Thursday, April 28th, one day after Jamie's due date.
The contractions and everything weren't really that close together. They weren't super intense. I was like, oh, it's okay. We have time.
Then around 11 p.m., things change.
And I told Joe that we needed to get in the car and go and go really fast.
So the Powers load up in their white Chevy Tahoe with soon-to-be big sister Addie tucked into bed with Grandpa and head towards Billings, passing right by the Red Lodge Beartooth Billings Clinic where Jamie works.
I even made a joke. I was like, hey, we should just swing in and I'll ask the doc for some pain meds quick and we'll just keep going.
25 miles later in Joliet, they call midwife Ashley Jones and say they aren't making it to her.
We'd actually prepared for this because ironically the last couple of appointments he'd been very worried that this was going to happen.
They decide to go back to the Red Lodge Clinic, but they couldn't have prepared for the next part. What speed are you going?
I'm as fast as my vehicle went, which is 98 miles an hour.
Unfortunately for Joe, that's illegal, and he was immediately pulled over by a Carbon County Sheriff's deputy.
Turned to him and we're literally about to have a baby, sir. And he's kind of looking at me, and then he looks further into the vehicle and looks at Jamie, and she can't sit still. He tells us, watch your speed, watch for deer, and be safe.
With the deputy trailing about a quarter of a mile back, Joe gets back on Highway 212, but about 1,000 feet short of Roberts, here at mile marker 83, Kinsley wasn't waiting anymore. Joe pulls over and walks around to the front passenger door.
Dome light on so we can see. I got the hazards on. I got some heat going.
The deputy then shows back up, radios in an active labor, and gets another car on scene to block most of the lane for any oncoming traffic. Now it's up to the Powers, with Jones still on the phone.
I was shaking a little bit. I knew I was nervous, but you just act on the situation and make it happen. Then she pushed and she came out so fast I actually had to move my arms back to catch her.
And the baby cried. I didn't even hear a peep out of Jamie. She was so controlled and her body just did what it was supposed to do.
The whole goal was for him to help me catch the baby anyway. Right. Everything else was perfect and exactly what we wanted. Mm-hmm. It just wasn't where we wanted.
A healthy Kinsley was born just after midnight. The group then moved to the Roberts School parking lot where Jones met them, and then the now 4 convoyed back to the birthing center in Billings.
I think it's just a different kind of special because Addie, of course, is like the firstborn and the first experience and everything. So it's great to have a different story.
I imagine at this point, you're going to think fondly back on it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah, already do.
Casey Conlon, MTN News.
Kinsley Corner. I think they should call that little mile marker 83. It should be named for that little girl. Welcome to the world, young lady, however you chose to arrive. 6:41, we're going to take a quick break.